Prime Minister for giving way during his excellent speech outlining the hope and renewal within this King's speech, much needed in constituencies like mine, in Luton North, where over 45% of children are growing up in relative poverty. What reassurances can the Prime Minister give me and my constituents that he personally takes this issue very seriously and that his government will address it?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful for that intervention, and I give my assurance to her and to the whole House that I do take child poverty extremely seriously. I'm proud of the record of the last Labour government in reducing child poverty. It clearly had a strategy, and we will have a strategy, and I'm very pleased to have announced today the task force that will lead our strategy to reduce child poverty. No child should be growing up in poverty. And we will work across the House on that issue, and I will take an intervention.
Very grateful. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way on his newly announced task force, which, of course, Beth Rigby was announcing on Twitter as we were all within this chamber. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister outline how many children will remain in poverty whilst that task force undertakes the work, which will ultimately lead to the same conclusion we are proposing to scrap the two-child benefit cap?
I'm so glad he kept his seat, chat. I'm so glad he kept it. Never stop talking about it. Absolutely. That's my guy. The lad, the Chad, the absolute boy, Stephen Flynn, holding Keith to account over the two-child benefit cap. It's fine, though, because it's fine. We don't need to lift the two-child benefit cap because we have something far more powerful. We have Quangos and Inshallah. That's what we have in terms of solving child poverty. A good question there from Stephen Flynn.
Well, look, I do welcome this. I know this is an issue across the whole House. I don't think there's a single member that doesn't care about child poverty. The point of the task force is to...
I mean, yes, there is a whole party of people who don't care about child poverty. They're called the Conservative Party. And now, joining them in not taking child poverty seriously, we also have the Labour Party in a shock move that stunned everybody. Did you see this, right? This fucking guy on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen him. People who are also on Twitter, like everybody else who's kind of terminally online and interested in UK politics, seems to all be on Twitter. But did you see? There's this guy called Prof Steve, who we've all seen around Twitter, I'm sure, because he's insufferably smug, the most insufferably smug liberal technocrat bellend on Twitter. Andrew Fisher was talking about how they should have developed a policy platform for reducing poverty that also included scrapping the two-child benefit cap. This fucking peer says, I'm assuming they did not think opposition was an ideal place to make the argument against a policy which is popular with the public. I might be wrong, but I think they will use being in government as the opportunity to make the case for effectively abolishing the cap. I suspect that at least some in the Labour Party are calling for this policy to be reversed with immediate effect, are doing so disingenuously and for factional reasons. Literally, yeah, like the only reason why anybody in the Labour Party might be calling for 250,000 children to be lifted out of poverty immediately could be for factional reasons. And luckily, of course, this lunatic is getting clowned in the replies. Yeah, the Feed the Children faction is absolutely out of control right now. Ah, yes, I love to disingenuously and factionally call for millions of children to be lifted out of poverty. Truly, it is unacceptable and outrageous that I am doing this.
Devise a strategy, as we did last in government, to drive those numbers down. It can't be a single issue, it's across a number of strands, and we will work with people across the House in order to do it. What matters...
I'd love to see Stephen Flynn sitting next to Adrian Ramsey as well.
...is the commitment to do it and to drive those numbers down. That is what we did last in government, and we will do it again. But, Mr Speaker, I'll just make some progress and then I will. Mr Speaker, whilst I respect the tone of the Leader of the Opposition's contribution, I can't stop...
Literally, it's just like, I know it would do it, but we don't want to. And we have a strategy. It just goes to another school, mate. We have a child poverty strategy. It just goes to another school. Mate, you've had 14 years in opposition, 5 years yourself as leader of the opposition, to actually think about what policies you might pass to reduce child poverty. And now you're just going to go, well, we're going to create a quango, and then inshallah, eventually we might actually do something about it. When there is an easy and quick and cheap policy to be able to drastically reduce child poverty overnight and help sort out our birth rate problem that we have in this country to try and ensure that people can actually have the families that they want. But you're not going to do that, are you? Because the public finances, oh no, we won't tax the rich, the public finances are screwed. Exactly, they love quangos because it removes responsibility away from them, absolutely. It means that they can essentially absolve themselves of democratic accountability by saying the technocrats did it, and therefore you have to blame them rather than us. We appointed the experts, and then the experts did the thing. Well, of course, even experts act with ideological goals in mind. So why not actually have somebody who represents the ideological function of how they were voted for, rather than subcontracting that out to somebody who is not going to be the same as the result of the democratic election? Like, as much as I think that the Timpson policy of releasing prisoners is a good thing, do you really think that if Labour had we will release tens of thousands of prisoners to deal with the prison overcrowding situation in their manifesto, which was then elected on rather than had a policy passed by an appointed technocrat, do you think people would have supported that policy? I don't think they would have done. But you could always actually convince people of the efficacy of such a thing by having that advice and then standing on it as a policy platform. That's how democracy is supposed to work. You can't just subcontract out policy to somebody else so that you can blame them when it all goes wrong. We need where that, again, it absolves you of democratic accountability. If you do it as a quango and you pop a technocrat in the role, you can either essentially get them to rubber stamp something that you want to do and then blame them if it does go wrong, or if they give a recommendation that you don't want, you can just discredit it regardless, like David Nutt with all of his proposals for reducing the criminalisation of drugs. But Blair went, thank you for your expert advice. I'm going to take that advice you've given me, right? Because I'm going to go into the toilet in a second, and I'm going to take your incredibly professional and highly knowledgeable advice, and I'll wipe my fucking arse on it. That's what Blair did with David Nutt's advice, didn't take any of it. In fact, we increased drug classifications. He got the wrong answer, so just didn't fucking bother. It's super meaningless, and all it does is erodes democratic accountability.